two couldn't be any more
Okay, you guys can go.
stoic.
Whenever.
Is that a
And
Stoic, yes.
Action.
In this case it is.
Okay. So, we are the Olmecs. I'm Zella.
I'm Gabby. You know our names, guys.
I'm Sofia.
I'm Ryan.
Ryan, yeah. Okay, so the Olmecs were the first pre-Columbian civilization in Mexico. They laid the foundation for other civilizations such as the Mayans and the Aztecs. The Olmec heartland was a term used to describe the area in the Gulf lowlands where the Olmec civilization was located, and it was considered the birthplace down there of the Olmec culture and religion and everything. Hold on. That's fine. Okay, so this is just a map of where they were. So they were like in this area down on the coast and kind of more up into this area, but they didn't get like all the way down here.
And the first capital was San Lorenzo, and then once it was destroyed, La Venta became the new capital.
Okay, so their village life and diet. The village consisted of several houses scattered all over the area that they lived in. They cleared forests and shrub to provide fields for their agriculture, and new ones or old ones were exhausted. They didn't have a lot of fruits or vegetables. They did fish, and they used lots of meats, and they relied mostly on grains for their sources of food because they could use them. The grain that they had could be turned into flour, which they used for baking, or they just ate it straight up. It was a root that they found in that area.
Okay, the religion. Most religious activities were performed by rulers, full-time priests and shamans, but they thought that the rulers were the most powerful because that they thought they had a direct connection with the supernaturals, who were the Olmec gods. The Olmec religion influenced the social development and mythology of the rest of Mesoamerica, and because in later religions they saw definite influences from the Olmec religion. And because not a lot of artifacts have been found, they use what's called continuous hypothesis, where they compare later pre-Columbian and Native American religions and cultures to try and assume what happened with the Olmecs. The most important supernatural of the Olmecs was called the were-jaguar. He was considered the rain spirit, which was very important because the Olmecs needed rain for their crops to grow. The Olmec dragon, which is this, he's one of the most depicted supernaturals because he has the flame eyebrows and the bulbous nose and very prominent fangs, so people associate the supernaturals with his image. And the maize deity is thought to have plants growing out of his head, and the god of agriculture. There was also the feathered serpent. The bird monster was part bird, part mammalian, part reptile, and he was associated with leadership. The fish or the shark monster had crescent eye shapes, smaller jaws, dorsal fin, and the band-eyed god is named for a band that runs across his face and goes through its eye. And because he's mostly depicted on pottery, he's known mostly from the profile. Social and political organization, the Olmecs used a hierarchy, and the elite controlled the materials, and that the more materials they had, it was a way of showing how much power they had. There was evidence of centralization because in the architectural ruins, the biggest cities were in San Lorenzo and then later La Venta when San Lorenzo was destroyed, and there was very few cities or towns outside of those two major metropolitan areas. And but they did lack some of the institutions of later civilizations, like they didn't have an army or a castle where the priests stayed. So, and they doubt that the capitals actually had control over all of the Olmec heartland, which is a reason why they thought that the Olmec civilization was destroyed. It's Ryan. Yes, it is.
So, the
Stop it for a second.
Do you want me to explain it? Okay. So,
Oh, wait a second. Are you back on, Emma?
Yeah.
Okay.
okay. So the Olmecs are known for their sacrifice, a ritual called bloodletting, which is where they cut themselves or they pierce themselves, and it served for like ideological and cultural functions. This is a stingray spike, which has been found in lots of Olmec ruins, so that's how they know that they did bloodletting. They weren't sure if they actually did human sacrifice, because they haven't found any Olmec or Olmec, what?
They have.
Huh?
They have found evidence of the Olmec sacrifice because of the ball game.
Okay, but that's not, this is for like religious reasons.
Okay, go ahead. I'll cover that then.
Okay, well, the reason is because they haven't found Olmec or Olmec influenced like sacrificial tools in the ruins, but they have found evidence that suggests that they had infant sacrifice, because there were numerous baby skeletons that were found in one of the cities, and they were thought because the were-jaguar, they presented children to him, so they thought that the child sacrifice was to the were-jaguar.
Okay, so the Olmecs were considered the first civilization in the Western Hemisphere to develop a writing system. It was a series of complex symbols and pictures that were similar to Mayan hieroglyphs. They were usually found on walls, and they're hard to understand, but people like archaeologists are able to kind of figure out what they're about by their placement and how, like, where they are in the civilization, like if they're by a temple or a religious place. The pictures usually depict something that has to do with religion. In the late 1900s, they found Cascajo block, which consisted of 62 symbols. 28 of them were unique to the Olmec civilization. And based on that, they were able to discover a new type of writing that they found that they called Epi-Olmec, which they considered to be kind of a mix between the Olmec writing and Mayan writing. The long count calendar was a non-repeating calendar with a base 20 and a base 18. It identified the day by counting backwards from the days that they had their mythical creation, because every civilization has their own idea of creation, so they just counted back from those days. They used a tally to decipher these days, and they kind of had different symbols for it, like they used dots and dashes and lines to figure out, like here, those are the dashes and the dots above it, to figure out the days that they had. It was similar to our calendar. Their calendar ended up, after they tallied all the days, to equal 360 days in a year, while ours equals 365, so it was very similar. And they used the symbols to represent the numbers, as I stated. So.
The ball game was a ball game called Tlachtli, invented by the Olmec civilization. They think it was an Olmec ritual, but they're not exactly sure the purpose of the game. Some thoughts are that it originated for religious reasons. It's played in a concrete court inlaid into the earth, and the spectators would sit around on the top so they could see into the court and the players playing the game. The object of the game was to get the rubber ball, which it was made of pure rubber, and it was usually weighed anywhere from 8 to 15 pounds, so it was very heavy. It was to bump it into or around the hole right here. The rules of the game, they're also not exactly sure on, but many say that a point would be scored for the team if the ball hit the ring, but if it went all the way through, then the game was automatically won. The players on the team, there's been evidence of human sacrifice involved in the game. The winning team would normally either pick a member from the other team as a sacrifice to their deities or gods, or the captain of the losing team would be sacrificed. There were many different versions, and there are still some modern versions played today. The players wore protection during some games. The uniform there's no evidence of the actual uniforms or artifacts left from the game today, except for the courts and the hoops. But in the pictures depicting this ball game, they showed leather breastplates and other protections such as knee pads and arm protection, but would have been made of wood or leather, so it would have been biodegradable, which would not still exist today. Also, in most of the pictures of the ball game players, there was a leather wrapping around the right wrist and the right ankle, which may have some religious significance, but they're not sure what it would be. And the ball courts are found up throughout Mesoamerica.
The colossal heads are found out throughout the Olmec heartland. They're supposedly rulers dressed as ball players. No two heads are alike, they're all unique, but they are all seen to have sort of a helmet on them. There have been 17 unearthed monuments, so to speak, found to date, and they range from 1.47 to 3.4 meters in height. The colossal heads were carved of volcanic basalt and is found in the Tuxtlas Mountains. It would take up to 1,500 people 3 to 4 months to move one head, and they weigh between 25 and 55 tons. Some of the boulders would have been recycled and recarved. And some of the facial characteristics of the stones depict African descent. This is the pictures of the heads. These are all.
There have been many different artifacts that are found from the Olmec civilization. One of the artifacts were bottles. There were many different types of bottles found from the Olmec civilization. These are a few. There were some of them that they believe may have actually been canopic jars, similar to the Egyptians, that contained bodily organs. Some of them were shaped, I don't see an example here, but some of them were actually shaped in the form of bodies, and then the organ, whichever it would be, was actually placed where it would normally be within the formed jar. Other jars were also just used for normal everyday uses, such as carrying grain or other agricultural product, as well as water and forms of drink. These are some of the effigy vessels. Actually, these are what I was talking about when the bodily organs would be contained in the vessels themselves. One of them is here. This may have contained organs from an animal or that of a person, in that the hole in this effigy is in its head. So it may have carried the brains or other important organs found in the head. Alright, these were some examples of the figurines that were found in the Olmec culture. This one just depicts a ball player. Many of the ball players were depicted with very aggressive facial features, as well as helmets and other forms of bodily protection. Most of them here are depicted as ball players. There were also very many depicted of the whole body laying on its side. The purpose of that is not exactly known, but it is, it may have represented some deity or a large official within the Olmec civilization at that time. Also, the Olmecs are very famous for their jewelry and pendants. They would be worn sometimes as a form of social class, to show the class of society in which that person was. For example, the more jewelry that they had, that represented the more importance they had in society. And a lot of the jewelry and pendants were in the forms of animals or deities that they worshipped. Alright, here are some masks that the Olmecs made. Some were said to be also incorporated in part of the ball game. Others were said to be part of religious, or some were said to have religious significance, in that the priests or religious officials in that time would wear them during rituals or to represent the deity that was being worshipped in the ritual.
So, the decline was from 400 to 350 BC. The population in the east dropped most rapidly because it was where their capital was, as we said at the beginning, and it was their main center for agriculture, and it branched off to all the different places in the west. So the people in the west dropped continually after the people in the east. They were uncertain why that they declined. They said it might have been from environmental changes, such as the river running through changing its course, or an earthquake, and it rendered the land unsustainable for agriculture, or even like nomadic hunting and gathering, which they did sometimes. It was also most likely because of volcanic activity, which can also be a reason why some of the artifacts aren't found. So, this is our quiz. Okay. The birthplace of the Olmec culture is known as the Olmec birthplace, Olmec home, or Olmec heartland.
C.
Good. Okay. What triggered the rise of the elite class? The environment, the architecture, the food source.
A.
C.
I guess.
I don't know. Okay.
I'll tell you.
We get to see the
Yeah,
answer.
you see the answer. The process of clearing forests and shrubs to provide new fields once old ones were exhausted is called sweeping agriculture, swidden agriculture, or slaying agriculture.
A.
C. Wow. The comparison to later
Sorry, you're telling me.
These are so many slides ago. So long ago.
cultures and Native Americans to find out about previous
Hey.
cultures is called?
Hey.
I remember that.
Which supernatural had plants sprouting out of its head? The
C.
Vanguard god, bird monster, or maze deity?
C.
Which of these tools were used for bloodletting? Barb needles,
B.
stingray strikes,
B.
sharp tooth bite.
Alright, how many heads and monuments have been found to date? 17, 21, or
17.
A, 17.
What kind of material was used to make the head? Sandstone, granite, or volcanic?
C.
C. Answers.
Yeah, I got that one
Good
right.
job, guys.
Hey, you know what?
I got number 4, guys. And number 3 after they told me the answer.